This is Alissa.
And this is Chelsea.
Welcome to med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud med-surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
So, Alissa, you want to give us some updates about what's going on with your life?
What is going on in my life, right?
What is happening?
Well, I have been doing voice therapy and cough therapy. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is nice and strong, whereas it has been really weak and raspy in the past. According to my speech pathologist, the coughing habit that I had was making me not use my full voice. So anyway, cough therapy is a very interesting therapy to be in, but doing better, not coughing as much, and definitely have a much stronger voice.
That's very interesting. I didn't know there was a such thing as cough therapy.
There's cough avoidance techniques. So things that I need to do when I feel like I need to cough, but there isn't actually anything to clear. So I had to learn how to avoid coughing to help reduce the swelling and then relearn how to use my voice. But when I told them, I'm like, so I'm a teacher. I use my voice all the time. I'm a nurse educator. I teach classes. I do a podcast. I tutor students on the side. They had a plan for me and here we are. So what's new with you?
Nothing much, just gearing up for another semester at Duke University. We're just coming off the holidays and trying to gauge what I want my goals to be for the year. COVID has really made me adjust how I approach goal setting. It really puts into perspective the things that matter most. So I think my goal approaching this year will be like, what matters the most? What's actually going to matter 5 to 10 years from now?
I've never been one to really set resolutions. So what do you do?
I'm a list maker. Like I love making lists. So my notes is like full of lists of things I want to do or accomplish or focus on. This year, I'm really focusing on like financial stuff. There's a certain amount of money that I want to save by the end of next year so I can start living from passive income. And that's important. And then life, where do I see myself like settling down, stuff like that. And then, like I said, focusing on what really matters in the big picture and the big scheme of things.
That's awesome. Good for you.
All right, guys, now that we're talking about goal setting, our topic today is removing the stigma from nurses with substance use disorder. Alissa, I'm going to swing it back over to you because I really want to hear what your initial thoughts are about this topic.
The reason why I wanted to talk about this is I attended the ANPD convention this last fall, which was, of course, all online. And they had this topic, and I actually learned so much about it. They did a presentation on dismantling the stigma. And what they talked about was, I believe it's in the state of Minnesota, that they have an entire support system for nurses who are trying to recover from some sort of substance use disorder. So it's like an AA or an NA for nurses that is run by healthcare professionals, and it's for healthcare professionals. So one of the things that they were discussing in this lecture was how difficult it is for healthcare professionals to find the right kind of support if they are trying to recover or heal from a substance use disorder. So the idea behind this was creating a support system where medical health professionals can go to an AA type group and not be ashamed to admit that they're a nurse. Because if you go to an AA right now, nurses may not feel comfortable admitting that they're nurses because of the shame or judgment that may come from the rest of the people in the group who are not healthcare providers. And then on the flip side, nurses may not feel comfortable to share with their fellow healthcare provider support system that they're having a substance use problem because no one else in their healthcare provider support system can relate to the substance use disorder. So you have people who understand substance use disorders in AA or NA groups, and then you have healthcare providers who understand healthcare providers. And so the idea behind this was, let's bring these people together. Let's find other people who have substance use issues and are healthcare providers. Let's bring them together into one group so that they can support each other and not have to feel the shame of like, I'm a healthcare provider and I should know better. And so I don't want to tell anybody that I'm a healthcare provider. And then they don't get the support of the struggle of being a healthcare provider surrounded by whatever the substance is or why they're using the substance as a coping skill or whatever, right? Fill in the blank. And so learning about this process, like all that background just to come to saying, learning about this process, I thought it was amazing. And I don't understand why it's not more widespread. This program is removed from board of licensure. So people who want to participate in these support systems, it's not affiliated with the board of nursing or medical boards or any of that kind of stuff, so that people really can seek help and do better and heal without professional fallback from seeking help, if that makes sense. But then if people are in legal trouble, they can be referred to these groups and then there's no crossover. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally get that. I know that nurses are not excluded from the difficulties of substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or narcotics or something else. So I guess my first thing would be is what are the resources? And I guess you touched on that. Would nurses be comfortable with seeking help from their work, from their job? Can they, as an employee? Where do you start with that?
That's a big question, is where do you start with it? So the way that they presented it is that it's not affiliated to your work. It's not affiliated with your board of nursing. It's more affiliated with an Alcoholics Anonymous or a Narcotics Anonymous type group, so that there is no like job ramifications. When I think about how impactful this could be, again, I think about the floor that I came from. So ortho and trauma, lots of pain medication given out. I think it was like the number 1 or the number 2 unit that gave out narcotics in the hospital. And there was a lot of drug diversion on that unit. When I was brand new on that unit, just as the unit secretary, not working as a nurse or even as an intern yet, I remember we had a charge nurse who was let go. I believe the official termination was falsifying the record because she was documenting that she was giving pain medication, but she was actually stealing it. And she died. I think 3 months after she was terminated, she died from a drug overdose. And it's people like her that I think about. If we could get people into some sort of resource like this, where it's not really punitive, it really is just you need to be surrounded by your actual peers to get the help that you need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I guess my question would be, let's say there is a nurse diverting drugs on the unit and no one knows yet, and they go seek help. At what point would someone be obligated to say, hey, this nurse is diverting drugs? What would the next steps for that be? And then let's say it's not drugs. Let's say you have a nurse who is an alcoholic and comes to work inebriated.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying there. And I think it's two different issues. Someone who's coming into work inebriated or someone who's diverting drugs from work, those are like legal issues, right? If you are caught stealing drugs from work, your work is going to decide what they do with that. Unfortunately, I know this sounds really terrible. A lot of places choose to find a different reason to terminate. What I just said, the nurse was terminated for falsifying the record, not for drug diversion. There's always a different term, which leaves them open. Nothing gets really reported to the board of nursing, which is fine if we had a resource to help these nurses get better.
Yeah.
But when you don't have anything in place, then it just opens up these nurses to go get jobs and divert drugs from other places until they get caught or until they overdose. I don't know. I don't know what the end point is until they're no longer hireable.
Yeah. I definitely think that there, like to a certain extent, there should be a point where we need to also make sure that we notify the Board of Nursing and that in order for them to retain their license, they have to go through a program.
Mm-hmm. The program that they had set up in Minnesota was available both ways. So you could be referred into that program from the Board of Nursing, or you could go into that program as a proactive, nothing bad has happened to me, but I'm trying to get on top of my problem before it becomes a bigger problem or something like that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's an awesome resource that they have set up there. And it makes me wonder, what can we do to support nurses everywhere else? Because when you think about the stress and the additional issues that have compounded nursing care in the last almost 2 years with the pandemic, those who already had a glass of wine when they got home from work are probably having more than one glass of wine now. All of those coping skills that we had before that maybe weren't super healthy, but we did it anyway. So how many alcoholic nurses do we have now? And how many nurses do we have doing recreational drugs? And how many nurses do we have just like with really unhealthy coping skills? And wouldn't it be helpful if they had some sort of resource where they could pull themselves back from the edge before they do damage to a patient or to their license? Or
I agree. You're absolutely right. I've had different ways of coping. And I do drink, not excessively, but more into the direction where my depression and anxiety has increased to the point where I am currently on medication and have been for the past couple of weeks. But not everyone has the resources for that. And everyone has different coping mechanisms. There definitely need to be resources beyond our employer that says, here's someone to help you. You can remain anonymous. I know something that helped me and has been helping me for some time now is 741-741. And you get basically a counselor on your phone and you can text them back and forth. And they kind of give you like a neutral perspective and feedback about what's going on. That's actually how I found my current therapist, was through that medium. So that's a great way to look at it, because I know that the stress from this pandemic has been unmatched. So.
But think about it before. So people who had healthy coping skills before will probably continue to use those healthy coping skills. People who had questionable coping skills before will probably continue to use those questionable coping skills, right? Like the glass of wine before bed. And then people who had bad coping skills are going to continue to use those bad coping skills. So then when we add this extra stress of a pandemic and being short-staffed and everybody's quitting to travel, no offense, but you have this just unbelievable stress that is being placed on the nursing workforce. If we don't have these outlets, if we don't have these safe places for them to go, if we don't offer a hand and say, hey, man, let us help you. And it's more than we're buying pizza for lunch on Friday. We need real tangible solutions and resources for our nursing staff, because we can't forget that they're human. At the end of the day, we feel like superhuman when we're in our shift and managing everything and put on our capes and just flying off the unit. But we are human beings who then go home and have to somehow manage the mental crash that comes with everything that you just did for 12 hours.
Yeah, so I think a part of substance is obviously that it's a mental health disorder as well. Definitely want to encourage people to get help and say that if you are seeking help, or thinking about seeking help, that you're brave for doing that. We often laud people for their physical fitness, but mental health also affects every aspect and outlet of our lives. So I think we should definitely be taking a mental health approach to this. I mentioned in our last episode how lacking psych services can be, but then we also see that if you are a nurse that has substance abuse disorder, that you may not be able to readily identify the resources that could be available to you.
I think you're absolutely right there. And the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of times the resources that are available to you are through your work. And so you may not feel comfortable to utilize those resources because you don't want your work knowing that you're struggling. At my work, there's the Resiliency Center and there's EAP and there's peer resources and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, man, if I was struggling with a substance abuse disorder, the last place I would go is all these resources in my work. If I was struggling, that's the last thing I'd want is my peers to know that I was having that kind of an issue. And so I think that's why it's so important that we get resources outside of work and unaffiliated with nursing licensure to allow nurses the support that they need. And it's more than nurses, it's healthcare providers, right? The help that they need that's unaffiliated with their job so that they can take care of themselves. It is a mental health issue. We do need to work on our mental health just like we would our physical health.
I know for me, the struggle for a long time was knowing how to ask for help. And then also the fear of, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. So I definitely think that when you start getting help, then you have to recognize that you do have a problem. And that can be a big step for a lot of people. I know that was certainly a huge step for me, recognizing that I needed the help.
I think you're right. I suffered from anxiety for quite a long time, and I got help for it a while ago. but I didn't realize how bad it was until I finally was like, I'm just going to talk to my doctor. And I remember going to my first follow-up after I was medicated for anxiety. And I was like teary-eyed because I was like, I didn't know I didn't have to feel that way because there was so much relief after I was finally getting treated. And so I think we tolerate a lot, and nurses are so good at helping everybody else and making sure everyone else is managed that it's really hard for us to stop and pause and do an assessment of ourselves. And for me, it was when I finally did my own self-assessment, because for so long I was so busy putting out all these other fires in my life that when I stopped and looked at myself, I was like, I need help. I need to be seen. I need treatment. And when I went in and talked to my doc and got treated for my anxiety. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like going in and asking for help or even recognizing that you need help, that's so difficult. But once you do, it's so relieving to feel like I don't have to run around like an anxious ball all the time. Or if it's anxiety, if it's depression, whatever it is, you don't have to feel like that. And I think that's so important to recognize, is that we don't have to go around living life like that.
I think that's a great way to approach it. Like, you don't have to feel that way, and that you can get help for what you need, and that you're valuable. And getting help is like one of the bravest things that you can do. So I'm really glad that we touched on this topic today, because I never thought of nurses with substance abuse disorders, but it certainly happens. And I think we definitely need to remove a lot of the shame and stigma from the topic.
If we can recognize that nurses get put on the pedestal, the number one trusted healthcare professional in the country, and those are amazing attributes to being a nurse, and we should all be very proud of it. But we're still human, and we still need help. We still need our own safe space. And it's a lot to live up to be the most trusted profession in the country. And that's a lot. We need our space to be human too, and our space to heal ourselves too.
Wow, this has been a great episode, definitely an eye-opener. I just want to review some takeaways and kind of recap here since we're running out of time. So Alissa, what was the name of that organization again? ANPD?
Yeah, so Association of Nursing Professional Development. At their convention this last fall, they did a session on removing the stigma from nurses with substance use disorder.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that resource. If you need help or thinking about considering getting help, please reach out to a friend, a family member, someone, because people care about you. So thank you guys for listening to our show. Thank you, Alissa, for talking to me yet again, just the two of us.
Thank you. It's always fun when it's the two of us.
We do look forward to connecting with you on our next episode of med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. Send us your questions, topic ideas, and feedback via our official med-surg Moments email address. That's amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We'd also like to remind you to become a member of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses, or review your membership at www.amsn.org. You receive lots of cool benefits and perks, such as discounted pricing on the annual convention and continuing education.
We encourage you to help us spread the word and subscribe to the med-surg Moments podcast via your smartphone podcast app to receive notifications of future episodes. Please be sure to leave us a review and recommend med-surg Moments wherever you get your podcasts to help us reach even more listeners.
We invite you to join the conversation by sharing your ideas and questions on AMSN's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter pages. And don't forget to add #MedSurgMoments to your post. Simply enter AMSN on the search field of any of these social media platforms to connect with us.
The content within the med-surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses. Until next time, I'm Alissa.
I'm Chelsea, and always remember, med-surg Moments is a moment in our lives, a moment in our med-surg careers that makes a huge difference.